This is Ray Hadley in the morning, right across Australia.
And good morning and welcome. Tuesday the 31st of August. I'm Ray Hadley. Great to have your company on 2GB, 2CC, 4BC, stations on the Capital Radio, Midwest Radio Grant Broadcaster Resonate Networks, and listeners on the 2GB, 4BC apps. A top of 23 in the city of Sydney, about 24 out west, a top of 27 in Brisbane, and we'll check the weather across the rest of the listening area shortly. And no matter where you are, the number is the same, 131873. Email me either rayhatley.com, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. Access information from the program by going to facebook.com/The Ray Hadley Morning Show. Before we get to the usual fare, which is the virus, unfortunately, some good news. The Paralympics yesterday. Gold to Australia, the 4x100 men's freestyle relay team in the pool. Rowan Crothers, William Martin, Matthew Levy and Ben Popham. Well done, fellas. Gold in the table tennis in the singles, Class 9 to Lai Na Lei, who beat her Chinese opponent. And then in the table tennis again, the men's. And there we had a victory, or rather I should say the women's, my apologies, Yang Qian, who beat her Brazilian opponent in the women's singles, Class 10. So we won both Class 9 and Class 10 through Lai Na Lei and Yang Qian. And then we went silver, Reed McCracken in the men's 100 T34. Silver to Michael Buren in the men's javelin, the F64, and swimming, a bronze to Timothy Hodge in the men's 100 backstroke S9 class. And we've got cycling, road cycling, swimming, athletics, wheelchair tennis, swimming again tonight, athletics tonight as well, with a stack of Australians competing. Brave young Australians bringing home the bacon as far as gold medals are concerned. Now, Groundhog Day will be along at 11 o'clock when the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian goes through the same stuff. She'll start off with record vaccinations, then she'll get to people with the virus, trying to beat the near 1,300 from yesterday. She'll talk about the areas of concern, being both southwestern and western Sydney. She's done that every day for the last 3 weeks. Then she'll get to ICU beds. We'll go close to 150. We'll have probably close to 900 people in hospital. You can only imagine how many will be on life support, of course, on respirators. And yes, Bill Murray starred in the actual movie, but now residents of New South Wales are actually living Groundhog Day. They're living it. The Daily Telegraph does us a favour every day, and thank you to Ben English and the team for doing it, because it's fairly complicated what they do, but they do it quite well. And they tell us what's happened yesterday in the various LGAs. Now, the figures we give you straight after the media conference are from the local health districts, which may make up quite a number of LGAs, but the telly go through all the LGAs. Blacktown yesterday 130, Cumberland 273, Fairfield 78, Liverpool 81, Camden 24, Penrith 85, Campbelltown 50, Sutherland Shire just 1, Parramatta 37, Hillshire 3, Hornsby Shire 4, Ku-ring-gai none, Northern Beaches 4. Then you get to those areas closer in. They gave Ryde a mention yesterday. There were 16, they said Ryde and Meadowbank are a problem. 3 in Hunters Hill, 6 Canada Bay, 5 Strathfield, 1 in Burwood, now Canterbury Bankstown, 290. 290. I wish she'd, instead of saying southwestern Sydney, I wish she'd actually say Canterbury Bankstown LGA with 2,974 cases in total and another 290 yesterday. Inner West just 6, City of Sydney 30, Georges River 17, Bayside 17, Randwick 17, none in Waverley, 3 in Wallara, 1 in Mossman, North Sydney 1, and then we get to Lane Cove 3, Willoughby 2. So, I mean, the area of concern, she says Western Sydney, but Western Sydney takes in Penrith and Blacktown and parts of Cumberland. And yes, 273 is a concern there, but 290 is always the record with Canterbury Bankstown. The message is not getting in. And I'll get to the reason I think it's not getting in a moment. In fact, I'll do it right now. And, you know, we have people from all sorts of different nationalities living in Canterbury, and they're all, in the main, good, decent people trying to make a living, trying to make their way through all of this in lockdown. It's terrible. But there is a percentage of them who just simply won't obey the health orders. They just won't do what they're told. Now, a case in point, 5 COVID-positive men have been handed penalties of $5,000 each after allegedly breaching the public health order in Sydney southwest yesterday. Now, at about 11:30, police were performing compliance checks on Optimism Street, Leppington. Well, that's a strange street for these blokes to be in, Optimism Street. They saw 5 men sitting at a table on the footpath playing cards, I'm told by senior police, without face masks. Now, police spoke to the men who revealed they had in fact tested positive for COVID in regional New South Wales and were then ordered to self-isolate for 14 days and then escorted back to Sydney on August 23. Following inquiries, all 5 men of Middle Eastern Australian heritage. Their ages 23, 25, 26, 31 and 32 were handed those $5,000 PINs, penalty infringement notices, for not complying with the notice direction. They were escorted back to their properties to continue the mandatory isolation. Now, senior police I've spoken to this morning are a little incensed with local police who are under the hammer, and I understand how they are under the hammer. But you see, it's difficult for every police officer on the beat to know the rules. But the rules for these blokes, they should have been rounded up, taken back to the police cells until mandatory quarantine facilities could be found for them. In other words, put them in a hotel and charge them the full bill to be in hotel quarantine. And I have a feeling that sometime today Mick Fuller will be asking for that to happen, to round these blokes up and put them in hotel quarantine, because it's quite obvious they refuse to abide by the rules. These are the same tradies who caused a small COVID cluster to break out in Orange a week ago. The 5 tradies were part of a group of 6, escorted back to Leppington by police to continue that 14-day isolation. They were fined $1,000 last week. Not that they'll pay it, one would imagine. But really, you know, you gave the police the powers to do things, and of course, they haven't been done. So you've got to go back and revisit it. If mistakes were made and police were not aware of the orders they had at their disposal, well, it's very simple. Go back and do what you have to do with them. Now, you know that I told you recently that we don't have information coming through anymore on what happens with those people who are infectious in the community. Well, through listeners and other people, I'm now told that the Woolworths at Mona Vale, well, one of their staff members had tested positive, and this was only issued yesterday. The person did a shift in the store from the 21st to the 26th of October, basically all day from 8 till 6. The team members have received Department of Health advice following isolation requirements. As a food retailer, they're doing the necessary cleansing. But you see, prior to our intervention about 3 weeks ago, there was no compelling reason for people going to Woolies at Mona Vale or anywhere else to actually comply with the COVID directions and check in with a QR code. Well, now they do check in, but if you are at Woolies at Mona Vale any time between the 21st of August and the 26th of August, any time between 8 and 6 p.m. on the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, and the 26th, the 25th and the 26th, not the 24th, you need to quarantine and get tested and stay in quarantine until the test is returned to you. The story that we had yesterday about prisons in New South Wales, it was spot on. The whistleblower was spot on. There are 8 positive prison officers in Bathurst. Now, they still haven't officially announced that, but there are. They said there's 2 from Saturday, but there are now 8. And those men have gone back to their families, or those women, as the case may be, back to their families, and may well have infected other people in Bathurst unknowingly. And then we've got the 12 at Parklee. And so, as I reported yesterday, it's now official. Every jail in New South Wales has gone into lockdown, and there'll be no transfers. None whatsoever. No transfers whatsoever for any of those people anymore. They'll have to stay exactly where they are, and there'll be no transfers of anyone from one jail to another. Now, I've been banging on about this for about 2 weeks. This is the party held at Maroubra, South Maroubra, I think, actually. And it's led to a cluster of 81 cases across Sydney. Well, the coppers have been waiting for 3 weeks now for New South Wales Health to give them the details of the party. And they have not been forthcoming because they want to contact trace, which we know they don't do anymore because they're overwhelmed by it. Strike Force Travel Stop will investigate the gathering that's believed to have involved more than 30 people at that home on the August 14, which was a Saturday. A total of 20 people who attended the party have tested positive, as have 61 of their close contacts. The New South Wales Police have been allowing the New South Wales Health contact tracers time to complete their work before they started their criminal investigation. But for more than 2 weeks, nothing's happened. They have yet to receive any information from New South Wales Health. Well, Mick Fuller's supposed to be in charge. Brad Hazard, tell your department to give the details to Mick Fuller today. They formed the strike force to go after these people. What do they get? duck egg from your Department of Health. I've had a gutful, Brad, of you and your health department covering up these issues. Give the list of people who are at the party to the New South Wales coppers so they can investigate the strike force. For God's sake, wake up to yourself, mate. 76 new local cases in Victoria. 45 have been linked to current outbreaks. 31 remain under investigation. It's unknown how many cases are infectious in the community. So like New South Wales, Victoria have just about given up. There's a story today which is of great concern in the Sydney Morning Herald. And we talk about aged care facilities regularly here and the need for people who work with them to be vaccinated. Well, I'm afraid it's not right. More than 60,000 residential aged care workers remain unvaccinated with less than 3 weeks until the jab becomes a requirement in facilities across the country, sparking fears nursing homes could be left without enough staff to care for residents. But workers on student visas can continue working more hours in the sector after the federal government extended the easing of work hour restrictions to reduce pressure on aged care staffing. The federal government in June set a deadline for all aged care workers to have at least one dose of COVID by the vaccine by September 17. To date, 78% of 273,000 residential aged care workers, including nurses, personal care workers, admin staff, have had their initial jab. But 60,000 have had not. I mean, look, the aged care industry is very powerful. Very powerful. They need to get behind this collectively and make sure these people are being tested as they should be. It's simply not good enough, and make sure they're vaccinated as they should be as well. Well, the Queensland Premier, who could believe that she'd do this? And then, as Channel 9 News pointed out last night, blame her colleague, the Chief Medical Officer, Jeanette Young. Now, when she was questioned by Tim Avia from Channel 9 yesterday about the fact that, first of all, the female cricketers from Australia and India are being quarantined at separate centres, and I'm told by Neil Breen on 4BC this morning that the Indian girls are staying at the Mercure Hotel, which is a quarantine hotel. Then, of course, the news is released that the Palaszczuk government has allowed a plane load of NRL players' wives, girlfriends and children to jet into Brisbane yesterday and then spend 14 days in hotel quarantine. This is despite announcing last Wednesday a 2-week pause on hotel quarantine because the system was being overwhelmed and Queensland was being loved to death. Now, you've got to remember that while she's stopping, for her own reasons, Victorians and New South Welshmen from quarantining, and there are plenty of people who want to go to Queensland because they may have a residence up there or they may be moving there, but they can't go there. But it's also Queenslanders. And the story last night on Channel 9, a lady left Queensland knowing that she'd have to quarantine to attend her mother's funeral. That lady's being treated for cancer. She requires to come back and have her cancer treatment continue. She's made application not to just come back and start a cancer treatment, but to be quarantined. But even Queenslanders are not allowed back into Queensland by the Premier, who then blames the Chief Medical Officer and said, oh, no, not my decision. Jeanette Young did this. Jeanette Young did it. Yep. I mean, really? Really? I mean, I'm not dirty on the Indian cricketers or the Australian cricketers being held into Queensland or the NRL players or their wives being allowed in there. You know, that's part of the deal. They've got a really good track record of restricting the virus at the moment. But they can't just be so impractical that they say to people like the lady suffering with cancer, now you're a Queenslander, but you can't come home, but those girls who are from the hotspots in Sydney, the wives and girlfriends of the players, they're welcome to come up and quarantine. The lady's not asking to go back into Queensland without quarantining. She's quite happy to quarantine. But again, we have this really, really complex stage of hypocrisy from the Queensland government when it comes to their own people, the Queenslanders who want to come back home. The SAS is rallying troops to fight plans by the Australian Defence Force to symbolically disband the once proud 2 Squadron. A flag-folding ceremony will be held on Friday for the 2nd Sabre Squadron to symbolically disband the unit and pass the flag to the Historical Foundation. It's understood the squadron was last year quietly, dishonourably struck off the Army Order of Battle, although the move was delayed by threats of mass force resignations. The disband order was made by the ADF chief, Angus Campbell, last year after the 4-year Brereton inquiry into war crimes in Afghanistan found that up to 19 members had committed murder or mistreatment of Afghan civilians. Well, I'll repeat what I said yesterday about all of this. Despite what may be appearing in the Sydney Morning Herald, and they accuse me and others of being agenda-driven, there's one agenda here, and I'm not agenda-driven, I can tell you that. But this is what happened. It mentions 18, but the information I have is that or mentions 19. There were 17 individuals handed show cause notices. 4 have been advised, these are SAS, that administrative action has been finalised and there will be no further administrative action taken against them. There are 13 remaining. They've either separated or will separate soon from the ADF, and Army has ceased admin action on those issues as well. So they've been told that there'll be no further action against them, no further action against any of them. And, of course, those 13 that were remaining, the action against them has been withdrawn. It's been withdrawn. But there's been no apology from Angus Campbell or no qualification in relation to, or clarification in relation to what he did after the Brereton report, none whatsoever. And yet these people are still being treated like offal, despite their service for this country. Tragically, we've lost 2 diggers. The nation mourning the death of 2 Australian Defence Force soldiers killed in a training exercise near Toowoomba. It happened yesterday afternoon. They were called to a remote road at Dotswood, west of Townsville, where a heavy vehicle had rolled. The 2 men, understood to be a 40-year-old soldier and a 20-year-old soldier from the Brisbane-based 7th Brigade, could not be saved and died at the scene. My condolences to their colleagues, their family and their many, many friends. It's a tragic story, Now, the ABC... I noticed they went on the attack last night with part 2 of their attack on Fox News and an attack on Rupert Murdoch. And as I've said previously, Mr Murdoch and News Corp are quite capable of looking after themselves. I do write a column for them once a week. I admit that. However, this is a different story. And I've said before that it appears that the program that formerly was the benchmark when it came to reporting important matters, and they've revealed a lot of stuff about corruption and many other things over the many, many years they've been doing at Four Corners, they're, a shadow of their former self. Agenda-driven, speaking of agendas, an independent review co-written by one of the ABC's most respected former journalists has found that the broadcaster failed to substantiate any claims that Neville Wran, a former Premier of New South Wales, was corrupt in its $2 million Luna Park Ghost Train fire documentary, describing it as having been overreached and misleading. The review found the broader allegations of political corruption raised by the documentary exposed the Ghost Train fire reported by Caro Meldrum Hanna and Patrick Begley to be, quote, vague, anonymous and unhelpful, and not corroborated by documentary evidence and multiple testimony. The ABC had until yesterday refused to release the review written by the former Four Corners reporter Chris Masters, Sydney University professor Rod Tiffin, instead issuing a statement that preempted the report and claimed it contained critical opinion about one aspect of the program. Masters and Professor Tiffin, in fact, found that the documentary misled viewers who may have thought that allegations were conclusions, and said the absence of rebuttal content left the reviewers with a strong impression the program concluded Wran was complicit. The review found that none of the Wran corruption claims stacked up. The documentary linked Wran to Sydney's notorious criminal underworld figure Abe Saffron and claimed the two were really pally and had Friday night drinks together. The review found no solid evidence of Wran having social relationship with Saffron, nor any credible evidence of a direct relationship between Saffron and Wran at all. It further alleged that following the tragic Ghost Train fire, which claimed the lives of 6 children and one father, Wran orchestrated to have the Luna Park lease go to Saffron's front company. The review found no evidence that Wran improperly interfered with the tender process for Luna Park, which was run by senior public servants, and so it goes on. The ABC Managing Director David Anderson, Editorial Director Craig McMurtry told Senate estimates in May it did not matter whether claims about Wran were right or wrong because they were allegations only and did not need to be proven facts. Yesterday the ABC said it was proud of the documentary. Well, the same sort of people who report on Four Corners are responsible for this stuff on TV. I mean, Neville Wran was a distinguished Premier over a long period of time. There's been rumours about Neville Wran that circulate, as there are about a whole range of people who are now deceased. It's almost inescapable that Robert Askin, another former Premier, was in fact corrupt, and it's been proven through various royal commissions and various investigations. But no such proof of Wran apart from rumour and innuendo. And to soil his memory in the way that it has been soiled is a disgrace. And I mean, I had virtually no dealings with Mr. Wran. I was then a rugby league caller who ran into him occasionally at various sporting things, and then had a bit to do with him after retirement in the form of, you'd run into a charity function for things like that, and you'd politely say good day, and that was the extent of my relationship with him. So I'm not in any way portraying that I was, aware of things or had knowledge of things. But if investigations are done by people with credibility when it comes to these type of investigations, surely the ABC can't continue to say, oh, yes, it's a fantastic expose, a fantastic special put together by these wonderfully talented people. How dare you question them? Well, they are being questioned. They are being questioned, and the answers we're getting back are not acceptable. The National Rugby League has issued the Sydney Roosters with a breach notice and a fine of $40,000. I told you yesterday they'd be in trouble. It's $10,000 for alleged abuse of match officials during the match, $20,000 for comments by Trent Robinson, and $10,000 suspended that will be activated if they don't behave. The abuse of the match officials, that alleged Sydney Roosters officials made abusive comments towards on-field match officials and the standby referee during the match. The club has also been warned that a repeat of such conduct will result in individuals having their access to the sideline removed in the final series. It's alleged at post-match media conference, the Roosters head coach Trent Robinson claimed match officials had a bias against the Roosters. That's his problem. That's his problem. It's okay to question things, but you can't say that they are biased. That means they're cheating. It's a brave man to call a person who's there doing a job which is the most difficult job a cheat. They're capable, as we all are, of making mistakes, but cheating, no. The Sydney Roosters centre Josh Morris has announced he'll retire from rugby league at the conclusion of this season. The 35-year-old played 322 first-grade games to date, 15 seasons. It's time to move on. He debuted in 2007, St George Illawarra 46, Canterbury 217, Sharks 25 and 34 of the Roosters. 6 tests for Australia, 15 appearances in Origin. Matt Chikin, after a refereeing career spanning 20 years, will retire at the end of the year. He did retire previously, but was talked out of retirement because I think he's probably among the best referees we've had in recent time. But he sits third at the list of matches refereed behind Bill Harrigan and Ben Cummings. Well, Ben Cummings went past Bill Harrigan, of course, recently. So he's behind both Ben, who's top of the list now, Bill second, and Matt Chikin is third. The GWS star Toby Green's tribunal hearing is currently being heard right this minute after he's referred directly to the intentional umpire contact. Didn't look too good. And I read the Telegraph this morning. He has a checkered history, young Toby, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't think a fine will be enough, given what I saw on TV. And the US Open is underway. Nick Kyrgios and Naomi Osaka in action sometime later this morning. There are plenty of other things for us to discuss. 131873 is that number. You can, of course, email me, 2gb.com, rayhadley.com, 4bc.com.au, podcast videos and program content by going to facebook.com/The Ray Hadley Morning Show. I'm Ray Hadley on 2GB, 2CC, 4BC, stations on Capital Radio, Midwest Radio, Grant Broadcaster, Resonate Networks, and listeners on the 2GB and 4BC apps. It's good to have your company. Coming up to 9:30. Radio ratings are out, and I'll share them with you shortly. 23 and sunny in Sydney. Penrith 24, Liverpool 23, the top of Richmond 24, Parramatta 23, the same as Campbelltown. Tomorrow sunny and 24, sunny on Thursday 23. We get to Friday sunny and 23. A shower or two comes our way on Saturday in Sydney and up to 15 mil of rain, they say. And on Sunday, it'll be 20 degrees and a shower or two as well. Beautiful day in Brisbane. Bit of cloud about at 4BC, but partly cloudy 27, 25 at the airport, 28 Bay Desert, 29 Ipswich, 28 Logan, Wynnum Manly 25, the same as Redcliffe and the Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast 26. Tomorrow, mostly sunny 27, Thursday partly cloudy 24, Friday partly cloudy 24, and Saturday partly cloudy and 24. For listeners on the network stations and the apps, Port Macquarie mostly sunny 23, Kempsey mostly sunny 25, Coffs Harbour mostly sunny 24, Wagga there was a bit of fog about this morning, then sunny 20, sunny in Griffith 24, Hay mostly sunny 26, Goulburn mostly sunny 18, Cooma morning frost on XLFM partly cloudy 17, Jindabyne partly cloudy 15, Orange sunny after a frost 16, the same for Bathurst top of 18, Lithgow a top of 17 and sunny, Bowral Southern Highlands top of 18 and sunny, Canberra a morning frost and possible fog, and 18 degrees. Townsville, rain and showers easing, 24. Gympie, a possible shower, and 28 degrees. Rockhampton, tending to showers today, they tell me. Rain tending to showers at Rocky, 4RO on the Grant Broadcasting Network, and 25 degrees. Now, the radio ratings are out for survey number 5, 2021, and obviously there's much interest in what's happened in relation to us. And I can tell you that the station 2GB has gone up quite dramatically. 2GB has gone from 11.8 to 15.2, up by 3.4%, and nearest rival would be the ABC on 11.9, and other stations appear to have lost audience, including Smooth down by 1.6 to 8.4, and also KISS from 10.6 down to 8.7. That looks like what's happened there. Now, let me go to the individual shifts. Ben Fordham has gone up from 13.3 to 16.8, meaning he is number one by a fair margin too. He's gone up by 3.5%, Ben. KISS, who were number one last survey, and well done to them, go from 15.5 down to 12.1, down by 3.4. The ABC in Sydney have gone up by 2.1, well done to them, at 14. I must stress as we get through this that the survey has been greatly impacted by COVID, and obviously talk stations, whether it's this network station 2GB in Sydney, 4BC in Brisbane, and the ABC, would benefit by the fact that we supply much of the information. Well, this is quite remarkable. My program was number one at 13.7, in front of Smooth at 11.8. I've gone from 13.7 to 19.9, an increase of 6.2, which is a bit amazing and a bit surreal, but 19.9, that'll be close to our best ever figure in the 20 years I've been doing the program. The ABC went 8.7 up to 11.2. Smooth 11.8 down to 7.7, down by 4.1. And so it's obvious people have gone to talk stations to try and get information. Now, Deb Knight 12 to 3 is at 12.7. She's gone up dramatically by more than 3%. Drives at 7.9. The nights are at 20.9, and the weekends have gone up by 2.8% to 14.6. So it's an overwhelming tick of approval for radio station 2GB in Sydney, and well done to my colleagues, and well done to Ben, who was, of course, knocked about a bit by that last survey in the media, but he's returned as I thought he may, and done a particularly good job to get back to 16.8. I've got to say, on behalf of my team at 19.9, John Redmond, my executive producer, Hannah and Andrew, of course, and Jesse, who looks after things for us at 4BC, and Samuel, who's our studio producer. That's a reflection on hard work. At varying stages, I've told the young people working with me that it's a bit of a grind, turning up every day and doing what we do, and if they need to take time off, to take time off. And they all said, well, as long as you keep going, we'll keep going. Hannah cheekily said, look, you're a lot older than me, so if you can keep going, I'll keep going. And they've done that, and they've kept going, and they've served the audience well, so well done to them. And I'm very happy to say that in relation to Brisbane, we've got probably our best figure for quite some time. We've gone up by 2.1 to 10.6%. 10.6%. Breeze on 8%, doing particularly well. And mornings on 4BC 10.6, which puts us within QE of the number one station, which would be 4KQ, and also 97.3 at 11.5. So we'd be, based on that, running third. And well done to all concerned there, particularly young Jesse, who looks after us in Brisbane. The ABC went down from 8 down to 7.2 in Brisbane, but we went up by 2.1%. So gratifying. What we try to do here is keep you informed. Usually we try to entertain you as well. That's a bit more difficult when we're dealing with serious issues like COVID, but we'll keep doing our very best to do both. And thank you to all the listeners who have responded after what happened in recent times by turning their dials to us in both Sydney and Brisbane to get their information on COVID. 131873 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au if you'd like to join us. Just a suggestion, Jeff says, where's Jeff? At Ambervale, southwestern Sydney. I know there's a lot of debate about mandatory vaccination for people working in service industries. I think people would prefer to buy bread and other shopping where safety is raised. Now, what we could have is some sort of indication from the various shops that their staff are fully vaccinated or have had one dose. It would be better to go to those shops as opposed to a competitor who may be reluctant to get vaccinated. Look, it's not mandatory, and Jeff, I think that's an idea with merit. So if shops do have people who have full vaccination, including the proprietors and including the staff who work there, I think it'd be a good idea to say we're fully vaccinated to attract customers, as opposed to someone who's not fully vaccinated. Anyway, good idea from Jeff out there at Ambervale. It's 24 minutes to 10. The ratings have come and gone. There'll be no celebration. We've got nothing to celebrate because too many people are doing it tough at the moment. So what we'll do is keep doing what we've done for the last 18 months and keep you informed on what's happening in relation to COVID across our wonderful country. 131873 is that open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au if you would like to join us. There are concerns about a range of issues today in relation to all of this. And we need to call it for what it is. And I keep saying it's Groundhog Day because every day we hear the same thing from the Premier. And I keep stressing we are where we are today because the government failed to implement really strict guidelines and strict laws in relation to people being transported from airports or from airports back to quarantine hotels. One bloke caught it, gave it to his wife. The rest is history. We're well over 20,000 people with it now, and record figures every day. Now, I don't know what the Premier can do to put any further stresses on the people in Canterbury, Bankstown particularly, or even Cumberland. But every day she says the same thing. Southwestern and Western Sydney are the 80% of cases are in those two local government areas, 80%. And there are curfews in place between 9 and 5. Now, I said and wrote last week that I thought that maybe it would take a few weeks for the curfews and the greater restrictions on those LGAs to take an effect. But what we've reported today, I think, typifies where we're at. These blokes that came back from Orange, I don't have their names, but I expect to have their names by the close of the program today. I'm told by police they are Middle Eastern Australians. I've given you their ages, ranging from early 20s up to early 30s. Now, they were sent packing from Orange because they took COVID, unknowingly we would expect, into Orange. Unknowingly. They tested positive. So they're sent back to Leppington. Now, I don't know whether they reside together or separately. They're sent back to Leppington, 7 of them. Yesterday at 11:30, 6 of them are sitting at a table playing cards on the side of the road, outside someone's house, I suspect. No mask. So the coppers pull up, start to interrogate them. It turns out the coppers find out they are the blokes from Orange who were directed back to Sydney to quarantine. They disregard that direction. Not only disregard it, but then they go publicly, and they're quite happy to admit to coppers, oh yeah, we've got COVID, we're infectious. You know, putting the coppers at risk, who then have to arm up with PPE and the rest of it to make sure they don't catch it from these 5 or 6 knuckleheads. But therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. There are not enough people, evidently, in those areas, southwest and western Sydney, taking this seriously. Now, those blokes and the police are now investigating why they weren't escorted straight back to the cells and then taken to a hotel and put in quarantine at their own expense. Why that never happened, I'll never know. And senior police don't know why it didn't happen either, because there are health orders in place where people who do this sort of thing, who deliberately disregard the health orders, can be taken straight to a hotel and put in quarantine. That can happen. But I just feel as if what we have here is that people are not acting responsibly. And these 6 certainly aren't. And they've been fined $5,000 each on top of $1,000 the previous week. Now, will they pay it? Probably not. Which means they can't renew their licences and can't do other things as well. Rego for their cars and the like. But, I mean, are we paying them at the moment $750 a week? Is that where they're getting their money to survive? Well, the first thing that should happen is the $750 should stop immediately. It should stop immediately. And people say, well, how do they survive? I don't care. They've put people in Leppington at risk. Good, decent people who are observing the rules. There has to be more than just, you're a naughty boy, go back to your place of residence and don't come out again. There's got to be more than that. And as for the New South Wales Health, this happened right at the start of all this 2 months ago, when different things happened. And I said to Brad Hazard, when I had regular conversations with him off air, I said, why don't you identify them? Oh, Ray, you don't understand. What don't I understand, Brad? Oh, we can't identify them because we're relying upon them to give us the details of people they've had contact with, contact tracing. And it was the merit departments at Waterloo I'm talking about specifically. Oh, we don't name and shame people because, you know, we need them to cooperate. That's been the mantra. Well, Brad, I've got a tip for you, mate. It hasn't worked. The mantra of not identifying people hasn't worked. The best thing that happened recently was people identifying that blockhead from Rose Bay who went up to the northern part of New South Wales. That's the best thing that happened because he was named and shamed. It's a pity a few others aren't named and shamed as well. Because perhaps if we got a bit tougher with these people who are breaking the health orders, perhaps that would be a message to others. You'll be on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, the Herald and the Australian if you keep doing exactly what you're doing, and Hadley will name you on his radio program. And you'll be copping a spray for your irresponsible behaviour. So I get to the strike force just formed. We've had this party 2 weeks ago, halfway through the month, August 14, I think it may have been, at South Maroubra. So the coppers go in and say, what's their names? Oh, I can't tell you. Why not? Oh, contact tracing. Contact tracing. Well, a week ago, Mick Fuller was put in charge. Or over a week ago. Why hasn't Mick Fuller been given the names of the people, the 20 who attended that party, and infected 61 others across the city of Sydney? Why weren't the 50 Australian of Sudanese extraction who gathered at Pendle Hill, why weren't they identified to the coppers? Well, people will say, oh, they didn't have the same powers then. Well, they've got the powers now. So can we stop this rubbish that we hear on a regular basis from Dr. Chant and from the Premier and from Brad Hazard? Oh, we'd like to thank these people for coming forward. Contact tracers. You know, we no longer give a continental about contact tracers because you don't even publish the number of people who are infectious in the community. Why? Because there's too bloody many of them. And when it comes to 11 o'clock today, expect this.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain.
Yes, if it's familiar, it's Sonny and Cher. I got you, babe, but why is it familiar? Every morning, Bill Murray woke up in the movie Groundhog Day to the same music. He smashed the alarm. He smashed it, but every morning it would be back on the bedside table with that playing in the background. And that's what happens at 11 o'clock every day. Apologies. Vaccination levels are up. Fantastic. Oh, we got to 1290, but those figures don't matter anymore. Well, they do matter. And the figures do matter that are in southwestern and western Sydney. And instead of saying the local health district, you know, give us the Canterbury Bankstown figures today and the figures in Cumberland today because they're available. They're researched and published by the Daily Telegraph 24 hours later. Give them to us today, not tomorrow, 13 to 10. In June, I criticised the registrar of the Albury local court called Wendy Howard because I'd been told that during a bail hearing she'd refused to watch footage from police body-worn cameras. Since then, we've been made aware and accept the registrar Howard didn't refuse to watch the footage. She wasn't asked to watch it at all. The word I got was wrong, so I retract my comments about Registrar Howard and apologise to her for the hurt and embarrassment and distress it may have caused her. I'm indebted to Sean. There was an article published in the Herald back in August 19. It was August 19, and we do have 845 fully staffed public and private ICU beds in New South Wales. I'll go through those figures in detail, particularly at 11 o'clock when we find out how many are actually in ICU beds. Of course, it was 17% then. Now it's probably over 20% by the time we get to that. 8.5 minutes to 10. Look, a couple of other people need congratulating, which I've just got the figures through. An old mate of mine, John Stanley, looks after nights on the network, headed up by 2GB in Sydney, rates over 26%. Now, he used to be a veteran, but he's younger than me, so he's not quite a veteran yet. And Michael McLaren, Midnight to Dawn, has 26.5%. I just got a note from management. It's also worth noting that the Ray Hadley Highlights program between 11 and midnight on a Friday night rates 34.2, the highest rating show across the entire network, just pipping the Reverend Bill Cruz on a Sunday night with 32.8%. And the continuous call team led by Mark Levy and my dear friend and colleague David Morrow, number one right across the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's been a Herculean effort, not just there. And for Russell Tate, Rusty, the Country Music Countdown. Number one on a Saturday night with over 23% of the audience. You're a genius. 4.5 minutes to 10. Can you send your words in the first hour to General Campbell in Canberra? It would make a good template for him to use. Just change a few words here and there and read it publicly, says Tom. I don't think there'll be an apology coming. What you need to do, as I've done regularly, is when you get it wrong, you apologise and withdraw. When you get it right, you double down and keep going. 131873 is that open line number, 2gb.com. No new cases in Queensland. No new case in Queensland, which is great news. The news, then back with the second hour of the Ray Hadley Morning Program.
Who's talking? Look who's talking. Ray's talking now. Now you're talking. Hadley's talking. Now nationally. To you and me, Ray Hadley. Tune in and see Ray Hadley. The best in talk back, you'll agree. Ray Hadley.
And welcome back. It's good to have you company second hour of the program on this Tuesday. Thursday morning. No new cases in Queensland, which is good news there, continuing good news. However, 76 new cases in Victoria, 45 linked to the current outbreak, 31 remain under investigation. It's unknown how many cases have been infectious in the community. That seems to be the typical word coming out of governments both in New South Wales and Victoria now. They don't know how many are infected in the community, so basically they've just about given up. 131873 is that open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. This has just come from New South Wales Police, and it goes hand in glove with the story that I brought you at the top of the show about these 6 blokes in southwestern Sydney at Leppington playing cards and then being pinged, and they're the same 6 that were in Orange, or there's 7 in Orange, I think in total. 6 of them were sent home to quarantine and decided they'd come out with no mask on and sit on the footpath behind a card table and have a game of cards. If brains were dynamite, these fellows wouldn't blow their ears off. But police have now issued a $12,500 penalty infringement notice to employees and customers of a Western Sydney brothel, which was still operating in breach of current public health orders. Well, I see a few stupid things across my desk here and have for the last 18 months. This would not take the cake, but I tell you what, it's in a photo finish with the most stupid. 10:15 last night, officers from Cumberland attended a brothel at Rydalmere after receiving a report via Crime Stoppers that it was still in operation, which is obviously a breach of public health orders. The officers spoke with the 57-year-old female owner before entering the premises and locating 3 female employees, aged 31, 36 and 56, and 2 male patrons, aged 56 and 57, none of whom were wearing face masks. Oh, dear. All parties initially denied the business was operating, one man stating he was quoting for painting works and the other was visiting his girlfriend. Well, if your girlfriend works in a brothel, mate, you need to find another girlfriend. Some people might call you a pimp if you're visiting your girlfriend and she works in a brothel. Police soon confirmed the business had been operating and the group were advised they would receive a breach for not wearing face masks, and all but the 36-year-old woman who was living at the location would receive another breach for breaching a curfew in an area of concern. Now, that's in the Parramatta local government area, Rydalmere. Further, the 57-year-old female owner, was issued a $5,000 breach for failing to comply with the notice direction corporation. All parties were directed to return to their homes. But a short time later, police, who are not stupid, observed the 31-year-old attempting to return to the brothel. She was arrested and taken to Granville Police Station, where she was charged with not complying with a curfew area of concern and not wearing a face covering indoor or outdoor on the common property. The Strathfield woman was granted conditional bail to appear at Parramatta Local Court on the 5th of October. Now, when I get the names of all these people, which I will eventually, including the 2 customers, we'll identify them. Now, I'm not dirty on blokes going to brothels if they're legally operating. That's a matter for them, and a matter for those who work in such establishments if they're legally operating, as no doubt in normal circumstances this one would. But I can't imagine the circumstances where 2 blokes need to get their rocks off by visiting a brothel in the middle of a COVID pandemic. The level of stupidity involving these 2 fellas and the 3 women working there, let alone the 57-year-old owner, beggars belief. The level of stupidity for the 31-year-old to return to the brothel after being moved on by police also beggars belief. As I quite often say in this program, the place has gone mad. There's currently a defamation case being heard, and normally we'd wait until the outcome before we make comment because we don't want to be in breach of any orders. But it relates to a friend of mine and relates to a program that I formerly ran for over 33 years, the Continuous Call Team. Now, Erin Molan is suing the Daily Mail. That's my friend. And it was revealed in court by her barrister, Kieran Smark, as the defamation trial started in the federal court. And I'll make no comment about the evidence that was given about a light-hearted reference to hard-to-pronounce Polynesian names. Her lawyer indicated that the program is based on taking the mickey out of each other, and I can, in fact, verify that because the formula was created by me, Bob Fulton, and Peter Frelingos, and continues under the stewardship of Mark Levy, along with Daryl Broman, formerly Erin Molan, who's no longer a part of it. She works on another radio network as well as working on 9TV these days. So I'll leave all the details for the court to sort out. But what I couldn't quite believe in 2021, it's not alleged, it was presented in court via email evidence, that the editor of this paper, the Daily Mail, which is an online publication, whose name is Barclay Crawford. Well, I've spent 40 years in the media. I've never heard of Barclay Crawford. Forwarded an email chain to one of his reporters and told her, quote, "Let's rip into this Sheila." Well, regardless of the outcome of the defamation proceedings, I'd ask the proprietors of the Daily Mail whether today Barclay Crawford still has a job. Now, whether she's a friend of mine or not, using that sort of expression, "let's rip into this Sheila," belongs in another century. Not from an editor of an online publication, as low rent as it may be, in 2021 or 2020 as the case may be. I'll watch the case with some interest. I'll also watch the employment prospects of Barclay Crawford into the future as well. Let's rip into this Sheila, eh, Barclay? Let's rip into Barclay. 131873 is the open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au if you would like to join us. Don't put the repeat offenders in hotels. Put them in some sort of camp somewhere remotely. Leave them there. Leave them there. It would be really Groundhog Day if you played the opening bars of I Got You, Babe. Well, Chris, you sent that a long time ago, and I've done that since, mate. Thank you for the recommendation. 131873 is the open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. Can you please differ between Canterbury and Bankstown? Many of us live in Yagoona and Barong doing the right thing. Well, as much as I'd like to, my darling, there's one local government area which is called Canterbury Bankstown. I'm not referring to the suburbs, be they Yagoona, Birrong or anything else. I'm referring to the LGA, which is known as Canterbury Bankstown, which has encompassed many suburbs, not just the ones you're referring to. So please take note, Janine. It is the LGA of Canterbury Bankstown. I'm not referring to the suburbs of Canterbury nor am I referring to the suburb of Bankstown. It's the LGA of Canterbury Bankstown. A police officer has been airlifted to hospital after being hit by a car in southern New South Wales last night. Around 8:20, police were chasing a stolen ute on the Monaro Highway, about 10k outside of Cooma. The ute stopped, the driver fled before a male officer got out and started chasing him on foot. The man then got into a white sedan before allegedly hitting the male officer. The constable suffered serious head injuries, airlifted to Canberra Hospital in stable condition. The investigations continue. It happened on the Monaro Highway, 10k outside of Cooma. So there you have it. We have a regular chat from Canberra with the Australian Federal Police Commissioner Rhys Kershaw, and he's on the line right now. Commissioner, good morning to you again.
Good morning, Ray.
Well, we live in this COVID-ravaged world, and I suppose that impacts on what your officers do, what they can do and what they can't do. How tough has it been, Commissioner, during COVID?
Well, I think it's been tough for all of us, but if I can, Ray, I do want to acknowledge our efforts in Afghanistan, and in particular thank all the ADF officers, men and women, who served with distinction over there. And what people probably don't know is we had 140 AFP and state police actually serve, and support the Afghan National Police during that conflict. So just wanted to basically acknowledge and recognise the efforts of our magnificent Australian Defence Force and also our police who have served in Afghanistan.
Well, look, I think it's important you mention that because you often refer to the fact that you have operatives in all parts of the world. But what role do the AFP play in a place like Afghanistan, as they may have over the last 20 years? Are they there just simply to advise and help the local forces?
Yeah, so it's about capability building and, being able to build up that police force, which they did very, very well and successfully. And still, a lot of our officers still maintain contact with those police officers and protecting, that Afghanistan community from crime and how to do investigations and so on. And a lot of those officers are still committed today and have networks within Australia here, within the various communities. So it's something that stays with you for life.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've had very important legislation go through both houses of federal parliament this week. It's Surveillance Legislation Amendment, Identify Disrupt Bill, they call it. Now, the new laws will significantly enhance how the AFP investigates serious cyber-enabled crime. There's been some criticism from privacy groups about the powers. These new warrants are unique and accompanied by rigorous reporting and oversight. But before these powers were put in place, the AFP did not have the explicit legal authority to take over a pedophile social media account. You had to actually ask them, which seems incongruous, but now you don't need to ask them under these powers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Ray. And look, I've got personal experience with this where it gets very disappointing where someone says no, especially a child predator, to their account being taken over. We'll be able to do that because, as you know, they have prolific networks. Some of these networks are 140,000 pedophiles globally on these servers, and a lot of them are Australians too. We're the third biggest, sadly, global consumer of child exploitation materials. So these powers are welcomed and our officers will be using them responsibly and, just reminding, I guess, everyone out there that we target criminality, and that's really important that people understand that.
That's really frightening that the world's a big place and we're running third, but you are concerned, I think, at the moment about the online child exploitation, which has been made worse, unfortunately, by what we're confronting at the moment in the form of COVID.
Yeah, and we've seen that accelerate, to where now we've 22,000 reports of coming in from overseas and from locally here. So sadly, it's growing. But also, Ray, the scams are as well online, and that's something we'll be utilising these powers to undertake and identify these networks that are operating in Australia that are scamming all of those vulnerable people, whether they be the grandmas and grandpas at home and their bank accounts and identities and a whole range of things. So we're looking forward to being able to use these powers to protect the Australian community online.
Yeah, just in relation to this other aspect of people trying to rort people, I'm glad you raised that. I got a phone call probably a week or two back now, and I tried to ring them back at a Melbourne number, but they didn't answer, or they said it wasn't connected. And it was a recorded message saying that the ATA were chasing me, and that unless I contacted this particular website immediately, the AFP would be on my doorstep within 24 hours. Then I saw a preview, I think, on a current affair earlier this week, about a lady who'd been stripped of all her assets by someone doing exactly the same thing. So these things happening regularly, and where are they coming from? Is it parts of Asia or parts of other parts of the world where they're concentrating their efforts and then strip people by getting their details, their birth date and credit card details and the like?
It is. A lot of it is coming from overseas, but we also have some onshore criminal networks. It is concerning, Ray. I mean, myself, I get SMSs, and it only takes one click, unfortunately, for you to be going down that path of being defrauded or having your identity taken. And if you talk to your friends and relatives, it's actually increasing. So part of our role working with the Australian Centre Cybersecurity Centre and also Report Cyber is obviously really important that Australians report this and we can collect that information and go after these networks. And that's what we'll be doing with these new powers.
Okay. Now, most importantly, 5th of September to the 11th, we've got National Child Protection Week. And you'll be using that week, and I will be too, to encourage parents, caregivers and the public to know how to keep children safe online, because it is a problem.
Yeah, and it's something that I consistently have said for a number of years, that we all have to be connected with what our children are doing online. It's not as safe as environment as the playground, sadly, and it is the pedophile and predators' playground, and we have to be wary and educate both parents, carers, and guardians, teachers, the whole lot. And I think that's an opportunity for National Child Protection Week to remind everyone, how do we keep our children safe online? And, we have projects like Trace and Object, where we're using the public to actually help identify images, and that's on the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation website, and work with us. So we need to work with the community to help protect the community.
Okay. It's good to catch up. No doubt we'll be talking to people about National Child Protection Week when it occurs between the 5th and the 11th, and I appreciate your time every month as we do today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ray.
Reece Kershaw doing an outstanding job, the AFP Commissioner. Those new laws are very, very important. Surveillance legislation amendment, I commend both houses of Parliament for passing them, significantly enhancing how the AFP investigates serious cyber-enabled crime. There's been some criticism from privacy groups, but thankfully it's been put on the back burner. But can you believe before these powers were enacted through legislation, the AFP did not have the explicit legal authority to take over a pedophile social media account. So when they're investigating a pedophile, under the old laws, they actually had to go and say, do you mind if we take over your account? And strangely enough, the answer was always no. I mentioned a bit earlier an email from Sean, and this does go back to the 19th of August, so it's a little old. But the president of the Australian and New Zealand Intensive Care Society said that New South Wales had 845 fully staffed public and private hospital intensive care beds. 667, and this is back on the 19th, a fair while back, 667 are now occupied, with 17% taken up by coronavirus patients. So we still had quite a few left. I think it's 178 it comes out at. But Dr. Holly said that across Australia there are 2,086 ICU beds, of which 1,740 are full. While the system was obviously stressed, there's still capacity in the system to absorb cases and turn to private hospitals when needed. So across the nation, that means 346 ICU beds are available. But it is a worry, because we have progressed from that date, the 19th of August, and we'll be interested to see what the ICU figures are today and how many beds. Now, as I say, then it was 17%. I'm thinking it'll be in excess of 20% taken up by COVID patients as of today, in excess of 20. So 20%. So let's pretend there's 840 beds. So if we get to 84, we get to 168, well, that's 20%. We get to 168 ICU beds in New South Wales, well, we'll have 20% occupied. And that means the fewer beds available for other people recovering from surgery, from a whole range of other ailments who require to be hospitalised in ICU. So the more COVID beds there are, the fewer there are for people suffering with other problems. And that's why it's important to keep an eye on that. And that's why there's a front page story today in the Sydney Morning Herald. Desperate bid for hospitals to get prepared. The federal government is seeking urgent advice from intensive care doctors about pressure on hospital wards from sustained demand that will last for months, shaping up advice for National Cabinet on whether the health system can cope with the lockdowns once they're eased. So it's a two-edged sword in that the more people vaccinated, if you do get it, you're less crook, and therefore you're not hospitalised, therefore you don't need ICU. But at the current rate, as the numbers increase and have in New South Wales dramatically, and I went through the figures yesterday for you, how they've gone up dramatically, well, the more cases under the current regime, well, the more ICU beds are required, which is not a good recipe. All odds is up fractionally, 7,797.11 Australian dollar, buying 72.95 US cents. Police in Queensland investigating a man found unconscious on the side of the road at the Gold Coast early hours of this morning. It happened on the Gold Coast Highway at Miami. Around 3:30, a member of the public raised the alarm after spotting the man in a grassed area. The 77-year-old rushed to Gold Coast University Hospital with serious head injuries. Police have this morning found a 34-year-old man assisting with investigations. A car has also been seized in relation to the incident. No charges laid, but the investigations are continuing. It's 10:26. Someone in the office said you've got a couple of emails from rating nerds. Now, I would not describe the news director of Channel 7, Jason Morrison, as a ratings nerd. He's just someone who takes a keen interest in radio ratings, given that he started his career in radio. The other alleged nerd is, of course, my tech guru, Trevor Long. And I think that he fits that description more aptly than Jason, to be perfectly honest. Poor old Trev. But he's a good bloke. But they say it's got to be some sort of record. Congratulations, looking at the numbers. That increase is staggering. rough mathematics, up 40%. I've never seen anyone go up by that margin, 6.2% in one survey. Got to be some sort of record. Well done to you and the team that support you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Trevor, for your interest. 131873 is that open line number, 2gb.com. How is your baby daughter, Laura? The poor love must be over the weight. Well, she sounded exasperated last night when I talked to her, I can tell you. I think if the bub doesn't arrive today or tomorrow, that her specialist will be inducing on Thursday or Friday. But I can only comment as a father, and I love my daughters dearly, but you feel so helpless when you talk to her and say, how are you now? Oh, Dad, I'm really tired. I'm really, really tired. And she's got a little 3-year-old to contend with as well. Gets great support from Brad, her husband, and little Ava's dad, and her mum too. Wonderful support from Anne-Marie. But, yeah, I think she's just about over the weight, as most young women would be, as they await the birth of a child and get to that 39th and 40th week and think, when's this going to happen? So thank you for your concern, Wendy, but I can tell you there's no update. That I'm expecting that her mum, Anne-Marie, will text myself or Sophie at some stage through the next 24 hours. And hopefully I'll be able to relay that news. 131873 is that open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. Now, those jockeys that I mentioned out of Victoria that went to the Airbnb, there's a report they're facing more charges as they bloody well ought to be. The 5 jockeys at the centre of the Mornington Airbnb COVID breach will now be forced to front the Victorian Racing Tribunal, charged over evidence they gave stewards. Jamie Carr, Ben Mellon, Mark Zara, Ethan Brown and Celine Gaudry were charged by stewards on Monday. According to Racing Victoria, they were each charged for failure to observe processes and directions of the stewards. For not following the racing rule, they must give evidence at an investigation, which is, of course, either false or misleading. Now, it's believed the charges relate to the presence of Zara at the gathering. His attendance only became apparent in the days after the other 4 were charged and suspended. Police were called to the Mornington rental home following a noise complaint. All 5 jockeys have now been banned from competing for 3 months for attending the legal gathering. Now, the problem they have, I mean, stewards in racing have unbelievable and unfettered powers when it comes to dealing with licensed people. And you talk about lying in court and perjury. Well, you're in a stack of strife if you go before a stewards panel and you are either false or misleading in your evidence. And that's what they'll be confronting. And they'll get, I wouldn't be surprised if they doubled down and gave them another 3 months each. Because what happened when they went there, they didn't say that Zara had been allegedly hiding in a cupboard when the police came knocking on the door. And apart from not declaring he was hiding in a cupboard at the time, they then, when they went before the stewards to cop their penalty of 3 months, did not declare that Zara was also there. And through other means, Zara was found out a bit later. So I think you'll find it's possible that further punishments will be, of course, handed out. They can be served concurrently, but I would think that they don't need to be given concurrently. I would think that the penalties need to be served separately, so that they get 3 months for doing what they did, and then another little blister on the end for lying to the stewards. They've been very privileged, as I said, as many people have been through COVID, to continue their employment prospects. And the Racing New South Wales, Racing Victoria, Racing Queensland have done a fine job in keeping racing going, because they've observed rules, they've had the antigen testing and the whole range of things done in New South Wales. I got an email about the antigen testing a bit earlier and saying, why aren't we stepping it up? Why is the government reluctant to do it? Well, they decided that those in the construction industry a week or 2 back would have to have either one vax or they could have the rapid antigen testing, and then they withdrew that on Friday and said, no, we're not going to go with that, you've got to have the one jab. And that was because they didn't do any research, and with the rapid antigen testing, larger organisations, larger construction companies and larger businesses or government agencies can afford to have a doctor or a nurse there to conduct them. But smaller companies can't afford to have a doctor or nurse there to conduct them on a daily basis. This is what you've got to do. You get a 10 or 15 minute result with the rapid antigen testing, which is about 99.8%, confirms or dismisses whether you have COVID. So it has a 98.9% 99.8% success rate, as I understand it. But I just don't know why there aren't more rapid antigen testing. It's been used quite successfully by Racing New South Wales right through the COVID period since it was available to people. And it should be used more extensively, but strangely it's not. The time is 24 minutes to 11. And Erin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ray. Queensland's to trial home quarantine for children who are stuck at interstate boarding schools to return to their families. $12,500 worth of fines have been handed out for COVID breaches at a brothel in Sydney's West, which has been operating despite health orders. The UN Refugee Agency is asking countries to keep their borders open for Afghans as allied forces complete their withdrawal. And profits in video call company Zoom have increased more than 50%, with second quarter total revenue up more than $1 billion. In sport, Australia's John Millman, James Duckworth and Astra Sharma have all been knocked out in the first round at the US Tennis Open. Ray, more news in about 23 minutes.
Now, Erin,
Yes.
Zoom was only a word to me until the last few months. And all of a sudden, I'm Zooming everyone.
Yes, it's your
I've got
entire
a Zoom
life.
meeting tomorrow with, I had a Zoom meeting tomorrow with people from our radio network. I had a Zoom meeting with the Jewish Board of Deputies last week. I had a Zoom conference with my wife and her friends on Saturday. And that's a bit of a problem because before that one, Sophie has another Zoom meeting with her girlfriends from Roseville College, and they all have a shardy or two as they're there. And I noticed in the Zoom meeting that it's very hard to hear what everyone's saying. So I sort of didn't participate after the first few minutes because I didn't think anyone could hear what I was saying. And then people say, you've got to talk. But one of our friends were very professional. They looked like they were a news desk, Glenn and Hope and their boys. They had a microphone set up in front of their little computer, Zooming.
You could do it at your
I have a
broadcast desk.
Could I?
Yeah, you could. And
Well, I've got to tell you, there was a legal matter recently. I had to go to a Zoom mediation, and it took me about an hour and a half to get on.
Yeah.
And I had Liam and the boys at work trying to explain to me what I had to do, what I had to click. And I could see them. They couldn't see me. They could hear me, but then they couldn't see me. And it went on and on and on for about an hour and a half before I finally got on. Everyone was very frustrated, most notably me.
Yeah,
Because in
well,
the
I
end-
can't say practice more because you're clearly practicing enough and it's not working.
No, Luke went on remotely for me and did it from the studio, which is wonderful how they can do that. You know, they can just log onto your website and do it remotely and do all that. But this Zoom, I mean, you just announced they had record revenue figures, did they, or profits,
Yes,
or both?
Yeah, profits increased 50%.
Well, I'm not surprised. And then for Father's Day, Sophie said we should have a Zoom meeting with all the kids.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's going to be complicated. Laura's probably going to be in hospital with a baby. She can't Zoom there. And, you know...
But you can
how
Zoom
do
with
we
your
get everyone
phone.
else? And she said, yeah, but she said that she can organise it and she just sends them an invitation and then they click on at a designated time, apparently.
That is
this
correct.
This is wonderful stuff.
That is how it works.
Is it?
Yeah, you can be anywhere, even in
thanks
hospital.
very much. Thanks very much for clarification on how that works. We apparently, I've just been told, we have a Zoom meeting every morning. I didn't know it was a Zoom meeting with my staff. But what you know what we do? I didn't know we do this. We mute Hannah. So
That's
she-
why you're
she
working
talks,
from
but-
home, so that you can just keep
exactly,
muting
we
Hannah.
mute her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we mute her, and I don't think she knows that, and she thinks she's contributing. And then at the end of it, we all say, "Fantastic, thanks, Hannah. Good job, well done." By the way, that echo you can hear in the background, apparently it's the NBN, I'm told.
All right.
Not just my NBN, everyone's
Everyone's
NBN's
NBN.
playing up today across Sydney.
Oh, okay. We'll have a
Across
look at that.
Australia, in fact, the NBN's playing up. So it's not, as Ben suggested, the modem. It's not. It's the NBN that's playing up, and
Right.
it's causing problems for a whole range of people, except you can hear me in the background when I talk to you. Okay. All right, Zoom off.
Thanks, Ray.
You know there was a great greyhound called Zoom Top, don't you? Well before her time. She was a brilliant, brilliant greyhound, Zoom Top, trained by a bloke called Heck Watt. Now, I wonder if anyone from the Watt family realises that Zoom Top may have been the reason they called it Zoom. They should get some money out of the Zoom people, seeing they make a stack of money. Okay. Thank you very much, Erin. I'll talk to you after the 11:30 update. Okay? She's gone. She's left me. Okay, from New South Wales Police. I mean, you can't believe that. There are protests going on outside many council chambers, a few police stations and other government bodies. We've got about 50 to 60 protests across the state from a small to medium group. There's some as few as 4 and there's 200 somewhere. And it's organised by conspiracy theory anti-lockdown groups. The protest against lockdown mandatory vaccinations, it's by people who are basically, as Peter Flingos would say, they're cuckoo. They're absolutely cuckoo, these people. As mad as cut snakes. You know, we'll play this in their honour. They're all cuckoo. Some of the locations and council chambers include Parliament House on Macquarie Street, Waverley Council, the Hills Council, Fairfield, Penrith, Sutherland, Wollongong, Mullumbimby, Newcastle, and all the way up the North Coast Coffs Harbour. The number of protests at each location varies, but there have been arrests at most, and the above locations, numerous reports of officers injured during the arrest. The situation's ongoing. Police are collating the number of places where protests are taking place. Now, this was all organised by some half-witted truckie who decided that, you know, they wanted to illustrate to the government they wouldn't be held to ransom, and it's all about conspiracy theorist anti-lockdown groups. As I said, as mad as cut snakes. As mad as cut snakes. But, of course, even people who are as mad as cut snakes have a place in society, unfortunately. And it's a bit like Groundhog Day because they keep reappearing.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Yeah. Groundhog Day. That's coming up, by the way, in about 80 minutes, Groundhog Day, with the Premier of New South Wales, where we'll go through the same thing we've gone through for about the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. You know, I just got a text. Oh, no, I'll say it more correctly. It's an email. I suspect sent from his mobile phone to an email from Phil Rothfield, Buzzboy. And he said, "You've still got it, old boy. Congratulations." I mean, I don't mind young blokes giving it to me about, you know, old boy, but this is a bloke who's identical age to me. You've still got an old boy. I mean, honestly. I'll tell you what I might do, Buzzboy. Now being double vaccinated, I know that you've been benefiting from me not being on 360 on a Tuesday night because I didn't want to travel and, you know, without being double vaxxed. Now I've got double vaxxed, I might just cut you out and come back on Tuesday nights, and I'm only going to do it so that you don't get a double up dividend on Monday and Tuesday. That'd be the only reason I do it. I'm going to speak to Steve Crawley and see when things move along a little bit before. I'm just going to make a couple of cameo appearances if Steve wants me to, and the only reason I'm doing it is to just cut your stipend a little bit, because I know you get paid that extra money for doing Tuesday night replacing me. The time is 16 to 11. And it's nice to have your company, 131873. We've got some adjusted figures on the survey because the survey doesn't coincide with the times they're on air. Deb Knight has gone from 8.5 up to 12.7. Well done, Deb. Jim Wilson's up from 7.7 to 9.2. So well done to my two colleagues there. And, of course, Ben had a big survey up by 3.5 to 16.8. And our program went up by a remarkable 6.2, 13.7 and 19.9. Father's Day is fast approaching. If you really want to spoil Dad this year, get him a spinal ease pillow. If Dad's a snorer, maybe he's got back or neck pain, wakes up with headaches or struggles to get a good night's sleep, he'll love Spinal Ease. Unique design and material of the Spinal Ease pillow helps support the muscles and joints in the neck, and there are different sizes and profiles to suit every sleeping style. So order a Spinal Ease pillow now. Delivered in time for Father's Day. Give Dad the gift of a good night's sleep with Spinal Ease pillows. To order, go to spinalease.com.au. That's spinaleze.com.au, spinaleze.com.au. Our Reach Out facility, of course, is an opportunity for people to nominate other people to be given $1,000 by the radio network. And I got a nomination from a Queenslander, Helen from Surfers Paradise, and it's about someone she knows and loves who lives in Sydney on the northern beaches. Helen's online. G'day, Helen.
Hi, Ray.
Now, you nominate Elizabeth. Why did you nominate Elizabeth for the $1,000?
She's one of the best people I have ever met. She's kind, caring, committed, just soldiers on in face of adversity, and exceptional human.
Now, I also note here she's got two daughters, raising them by herself. She works, but is out of work because of COVID, unfortunately. She has
That's
a
right.
mortgage, doesn't know how she's going to pay it, never complains about it, always out helping others. Now, remarkably, she is in training today applying for another job, which is fantastic
right.
news. But
Yeah.
your nomination from up there at Beautiful Surfers meant that we were talking to Elizabeth and said we'd like to give you $1,000, but she's in this training session right now, so I thought I'd talk with you and tell you that we're going to give your dear friend Lizzie $1,000 in the Reach Out competition, okay?
Fantastic, Ray. Great news.
Good on you, darling. You're a very generous person nominating her. Now, exactly where are you at Surfers? I'm very envious.
I live 1.5 k's from the ocean on the back of the Isle of Capri. It's a beautiful location.
I know the Isle of Capri. I go there quite often as I get to go down Bundle Road on the way back to the airport. I swing across that way. I'd love to come up and see you at Main Beach, but I'm prohibited, Helen, unfortunately, at the moment, so we'll just have to remain friends on the phone, okay?
Okay, Ray. Lovely to talk with you.
Lovely to talk to you, and thank you for nominating your dear friend Lizzie, and she gets the $1,000 in the Reach Out giveaway today. Well done to her. All odds is up fractionally 0.11%, 7,797.5. For over 70 years, Hearing Australia has helped 1 million Australians discover the secret of celebrating the sounds they love. They take the time to understand you, tailoring advice and solutions to your life and ensuring you receive the right long-term care. Hearing Australia, go to the website, hearing.com.au. That's hearing.com.au, 9.5 to 11. 131873 is the open line number, 2gb.com. Click on the feedback icon if you would like to join us. There are plenty of people wanting to have their say. Yes, that Rothermere brothel that we reported earlier is actually in Euston Street in the Victoria Road intersection, adjacent to the Rothermere Tavern. In prior COVID times, of course, they operated quite legally. Strange that they can actually do what they do now. Well, not strange, illegal, in fact, and they can't do it anymore. They no longer do it. If you want another Groundhog Day song, try Heat of the Moment. It's used in Supernatural episode where they encountered a Groundhog Day funny episode. Look, thank you for that, but we'll stick with the tried and true one because it's coming up in about 6 minutes from now.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Poor old Bill Murray woke up with the same song every morning, and the alarm went off at 6 a.m. He busted the clock day after day, but continually the clock was there the next morning as he went through the same ritual, day after day after day. And Gladys Berejiklian becomes our own Bill Murray, which he takes us through the same ritual in about 4.5 minutes from now. And that'll be instead of the news on some of the network stations and 2GB in Sydney, 4.5 away from 11. You can't believe this. The Speaker of the Queensland Parliament has advised to lock down the Parliament. This ragtag bunch of antivirus conspiracy theorists are trying to storm the Parliament. Queensland Police hopefully will be let off the leash finally and deal with these people as they should be. The Speaker of the Queensland Parliament has locked down Parliament with this group of antivirus conspiracy theorist lunatics trying to storm Parliament. I don't know how many are there. They say there are somewhere between 400 and 200 at the various protests across the country. I hope they get dealt with accordingly. News or the media conference comes up next. Okay, the time signal comes up for 11 o'clock, and shortly we'll go to the New South Wales Premier for today's media conference and see what figures will be produced, how many people are in ICU, how many people are hospitalised and how many people have been vaccinated. And repeating the breaking news out of Queensland, the Speaker of the Queensland Parliament has locked down Parliament with this ragtag group of anti-virus conspiracy theorists threatening to storm Parliament, apparently. I hope the coppers are let off the leash and deal with them accordingly. You can't have people behaving in such a fashion during these times. Here's the Premier.
Of winter, I can safely say that we're looking forward to a better spring than we did winter. And I'm pleased to report, however, that 67% of our adult population officially ticked over yesterday have received their first dose of vaccine. So it's really pleasing to know that officially we were 66-something% yesterday. 2/3 of our adult population is now vaccinated. And obviously we want to get to that magic 70% and 80% as quickly as possible. So can I please encourage everybody who's not yet made plans for vaccination to really consider September the month when them and their loved ones, your loved ones and your family are vaccinated. It's so critical for all of us to have a more hopeful spring by making sure we get those vaccination rates up. To 8 p.m. last night, we had 1,164 cases of COVID. 3 people lost their lives, and we extend our deepest condolences to their loved ones. A female in her 50s who did have underlying health conditions, a male in his 80s and a male in his 90s. And again, we extend our deepest condolences to the loved ones of those 3 people. Again, I wanted to stress the importance of vaccination, and we're looking forward in this week, perhaps we get to the 7 million 7 or at least 70% first dose vaccination in New South Wales would be amazing, because once we know that you've signed up to your first dose, you'll be getting your second dose. And what we want to see then, and Dr. Chan and the Minister and I were just discussing this earlier, is once we see first doses get to 80%, we know that we'll be able to reach that target. And it's so critical for us, because whilst 70% will give those of us that are vaccinated, 70% double dose gives those of us vaccinated freedoms, 80% double dose allows us to look at international travel, welcoming home all Australians. How wonderful would it be to welcome back all Aussies who want to be reunited with their families by Christmas? And New South Wales will step up to support that cause and that case. And I really stress to everybody the importance of vaccination. So please think about our community, think about your own loved ones, and think about where we can move forward together as a society. And today we're really pleased to have with us Nurse Michelle Dowd. Michelle is an intensive care nurse unit manager at Liverpool Hospital. She's going to speak to us about what it's like being a nurse in intensive care with COVID patients coming in one of our hotspot areas. But I wanted to take the opportunity through Michelle to acknowledge all of our nurses across the network, across New South Wales. Nurses have stepped up, and whether they've been trained to work in ICU, or whether they're supporting us in our vaccinations, and often they're the ones holding the hands of COVID patients when relatives, unfortunately, aren't allowed to visit them. So I can't thank enough our nurses across the state. Please know you're deeply appreciated, and we know that we'll be asking you to do more in September and October, but we also know this is the training that you've received and that you're up for the task. And I just want to say that we're thinking of you every day, appreciating the stresses you're under, but also deeply grateful for the wonderful work you're doing to support those most in need. So Dr. Chant will now give the health update. The Deputy Premier will speak about regional New South Wales, and Nurse Michelle Dowd from Liverpool Intensive Care Unit, who's the Nurse Unit Manager, will speak about the role of nurses.
Okay, we'll come back a bit later. We've got all the facts and figures we need to at the moment, and I'll have that printout coming very shortly. 67% of New South Wales adults have received the first dose. She didn't tell us how many have got the second jab, but it'd be close to 40%, I'd imagine now. We'll find out a bit later when we get the full stats coming through. Unfortunately, 1,164 COVID cases. The only thing she didn't say is what she normally says. She must have been listening with the program. She didn't say, and the areas of concern, again, are Western and Southwestern Sydney, and I'll say it for her. The areas of concern are, again, Western and Southwestern Sydney. Unfortunately, 3 people have died, a lady in her 50s with underlying conditions, a gentleman in his 80s and a gentleman in his 90s have passed away. She didn't give us how many tests were done, and she didn't specifically tell us how many people had been vaccinated, apart from saying 67% of people of adult population have had their first dose, so we'll have to check and see exactly what the figures are here. Okay, let me go through it. 1,164 new locally acquired cases in the 24 hours. No figure here for, here we go, 130,000 tests compared with the previous day of 157,000. We now have confirmed cases of 26,820. To the hospitalisation, 871 COVID-19 cases admitted to hospital, 143 in intensive care, and 58 are on life support. Now, comparing the figures with yesterday, they've gone up dramatically. The 840 yesterday goes to 871 hospitalised. The 137 in ICU goes to 143, so we're climbing towards that 20% mark of ICU beds in New South Wales that are used by COVID patients. And the 48 on life support goes to 58 today. So they're worrying figures, and the fact that we still have 1,164 is equally worrying. Now, again, even though she didn't say it, I said she must have been listening to us. But obviously, here we are, 417 from Western Sydney. Let's do the mathematics on this and see what we get. So it's 417 in Western Sydney and 379 in the southwest. So 796, so let's call it 800. 800 of 1164 from two local health districts, which take in quite a number of local government areas. We'll have to wait till tomorrow to get the split up from the local government areas from the Daily Telegraph as we normally do. So it's 417 from the Western Sydney Local Health District, separate to the local government area, 379 from Southwestern Local Health District, 116 from the Sydney Health District, 73 from Southeastern Sydney, 54 from Western New South Wales, 45 are from the P and Blue Mountains, 15... And we're about to welcome the stations back on the network right now. Welcome back to stations rejoining us after that news break. We're just going through the figures in the various health districts. 1,164 cases in New South Wales in the past 24 hours. I said 73 from Southeastern Sydney Health District, 54 from Western New South Wales Health District, so obviously Dubbo is still a problem. 45 in the Nepean Blue Mountains Health District, 15 from Northern Sydney, 5 from the Illawarra Shoalhaven, 4 from Far Western Health District, 4 the Central Coast, 2 in the Hunter Valley. How they're still in lockdown, and Northern New South Wales still in lockdown, I'll never know. 1 is from Southern New South Wales Local Health District, 6 cases yet to be assigned to health districts. So there you have it. We might go back as we did yesterday when we hear from the intensive care nurse and hear what she's got to say. And we heard yesterday from, of course, a paramedic and inspector, Inspector Tony Ibrahim yesterday, told us about what his life's like, and we'll try and hear from the intensive nurse as well. Now, inmates and 1 staff member, let me have a look at that. Now, that would relate to prisoners. Let me see whether we've got any requirement there, what they've told us about. Yep, here we go. 43 cases reported at Parklee. Since the 18th of August, we've got 75 cases and 1 healthcare worker. Now, we've got 43 prisoners and 1 healthcare worker at Parklee Jail with the virus. So that's an outbreak. It started, I think, with 12, and now we've got 43. There's another case at Bathurst Jail from 8 o'clock last night. They're now saying it's 7 and they're all staff members. Well, we had 8 yesterday. So I would dispute the 7. Perhaps it would be closer to 9. That's what we're up to at the moment. So 43 at Parklee Jail. Like me pink. 43 at Parklee Jail. That's a lot of people in jail with the virus at the moment at Parklee. 131873 is the open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. 8 o'clock last night, I had reason to go past Marylands Park, Marylands, one of the hot spots. The ground has a basketball court, soccer field. There are at least 20 people, males and females, walking up and down the basketball court outer area. They were talking with each other, not social distancing, the majority not wearing masks. Obviously, they were exercising. That's great. One would hate to think what they were doing the wrong thing. Says David, well, we'll pass that on to police and see what happens there. 131873 is the open line number, 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au, if you would like to be part of the program. It's 10 past 11. Now, we're getting further information about this protest of this ragtag group outside the Queensland Parliament, which has forced the Speaker to lock down the Queensland Parliament in Brisbane. And it's a gathering of minds. It's people who are gathered to protest antivirus conspiracy theories, and also some people protesting the euthanasia legislation, which is coming before the Parliament sometime in the future. Now, we don't know whether it's a person attached to the euthanasia debate or a person attached to the anti-virus debate, but one of them's tried to breach the security doors of Parliament. They've been stopped, only one person, according to the Courier Mail, and that person has been removed by police. So the doors have been locked purely and simply as a precaution at the moment. No one inside the chamber is in any danger. Police have removed the person who tried to breach the security cordon around the Parliament building, and the other protests continue. Now, as I say, it could be a combination of those protesting against euthanasia legislation or just simply other people who are there to protest. And I don't know why you'd be protesting in Brisbane. There's no lockdown there at the moment in the real form, like there's a lockdown in other states and territories, but there are certain restrictions, obviously. Not, I guess, really terrible restrictions, but there are certain restrictions still in place in parts of Queensland at the moment. But anyway, we'll find out probably before the end of the program what it's all about in relation to the protest and in relation to the person who tried to breach security. Now, Michelle Dowd is an intensive care manager. In fact, she's the manager of intensive care at Liverpool Hospital, and usually these people give a great insight into what's happening and their day-to-day lives. Yesterday we heard from the Ambulance Inspector Joe Ibrahim, and today we hear from Michelle Dowd, the intensive care nurse manager at Liverpool Hospital. Here she is.
My name's Michelle Dowd and I'm the nurse manager at intensive care for Liverpool Hospital. I'm here with you today to share what it's like for intensive care nurses on the front line during this pandemic response and to encourage you all to please get vaccinated. Intensive care units in our hospitals are where we look after our sickest, most vulnerable patients. We work in a large team of health professionals and support staff to look after the sickest patients in the hospital. These are patients who've been victims of trauma, patients who've had strokes, cardiac arrests, major surgery. To keep everyone safe in our intensive care unit right now, we've essentially divided it so we can keep the COVID and the non-COVID patients separate and protect the most vulnerable. The Delta variant is just that contagious, and that's why vaccination is so very important. Intensive care patients need one-on-one nursing care. They need to be monitored really closely so that we can respond immediately in case they deteriorate. If you or your loved one is in intensive care right now for any reason, you may not be able to have visitors. We know it's really hard at the moment to be separated from your support network, but the amount of virus that's circulating in the community just poses too much risk to our patients. For our COVID ICU patients, they can't have visitors at all. Every day we're communicating with families over the phone and by video call to connect them. In the worst cases, at the end of life, we'll connect a call with the family and we'll hold the patient's hands and we'll provide as much care and comfort and support as we possibly can. We know this is really hard for families. This is really hard for us as well. We normally work really closely with our families at the bedside when we look after our intensive care patients. But looking after COVID patients is not just emotionally hard for intensive care nurses, it's physically really hard work as well. These patients are some of the sickest we've ever seen. They require so much support and monitoring and physical care. We're in layers of PPE, sometimes for hours at a time. This is really physically hard work. While our intensive care units are really busy and stretched at the moment, we do work in a broader New South Wales ICU network and we can share the load to some degree. But we really need your help to stop the spread and keep people out of hospital and out of intensive care. The Delta variant is so contagious that we have entire family groups in our hospital. In some really tragic circumstances, we've had parents, both parents of young children, so sick that they need to be ventilated in our intensive care unit and separated from their children. Sometimes they don't have extended family to look after these children, or the extended family is so sick that we need to make alternative care arrangements. This virus is literally ripping families apart. Many of our patients with COVID are young, they're normally fit and healthy. They come from a variety of backgrounds, but the one thing that they have in common is that they are mostly all unvaccinated. We'll be with you right through this, but we need you to be with us now. If you haven't booked your vaccine, please go out today and book that vaccination. Follow the health orders. Help us as your frontline healthcare workers to keep patients out of hospital. By getting vaccinated, you don't just protect yourself, you protect your family, your friends, strangers. You will save lives. You'll help us to save lives. So I know that the restrictions are really hard. We all want things to get back to normal, but we have to stay the course. So please, book your vaccination today, work with us, and we will get through this together. Thank you so much.
What an outstanding individual. What an outstanding woman. Michelle Dowd, intensive care manager at Liverpool Hospital. Very emotional, obviously, and the toll on her and her colleagues must be immense, detailing what she does when we're reaching the end of someone's life. It just seems terrible, absolutely terrible. But a very important message, of course, and the message is get vaccinated, from Michelle Dowd. Well done, Michelle. It's worth hearing people like Michelle Dowd as often as we possibly can enunciate what has to happen in these particular circumstances. There's never been a more important time to protect all Australians. The one Aussie business committed to doing that is PPE Tech. Now, most face masks are imported from overseas, but PPE Tech make the highest quality P2 face mask right here in Australia. Similar to the N95 mask, PPE Tech's P2 mask comfortably seal around your face and filter more than 98% of particles. Now get 100% Australian-owned, Australian-made, Australian-tested and Aussie-certified masks you can trust. And right now you save up to 40% off when you get free delivery on Australian-made P2 face masks from PPE Tech. Protect yourself and those around you by getting hold of these masks now for your family, for your friends and for your work colleagues. Do it. ppetech.com.au. ppetech.com.au. Those words from Michelle Dowd made me think about Matt Scallion's song.
Aussie as a lazy Sunday Harvey, stubby in your hand, snag on the barbie. Aussie as nippers on the beach, kids on the veranda, feeding lorikeets. It's a blue tongue in the garden, it's a footy on the roof, it's a cheeky kookaburra laughing at you. It's 100 different cultures all rolled into one. Let's call them Barry Baz, Sharon Shaz, it's Aussie as. Aussie as a raffle and a pub, and chicken chow mein in a bowling club. Aussie as a flutter on the cup, and $5 in the tin when the salvos show up. It's a bugle call at sunrise, it's a pinned on rosemary sprig, it's a rum and milk and 10 on toes every April 25th. It's 100 different cultures all rolled into one. Let's call them Barry Baz, Sharon Shaz, it's Aussie as. 05 the Bathurst, a box of redheads matches, kids swinging on a Hills horse, and bindies in the grass. A cyclone called Tracy, a ginger boy named Blue, and Jack and Jillaroo. Now that's Aussie as. Yachts on Boxing Day, and that big smile on Luna Park's face. It's a simple word like sorry, it's a flag to call your own. It's red, white and blue, and it's red, black and yellow. It's 100 different cultures all rolled into one. Let's call them Barry Baz, Sharon Shaz, it's Aussie as. A pair of tracky dads, Aussie as.
Good on you, Matt. He's been touring Australia where he can, just I think in his caravan, with Shaz, his wife, and just going to various places, entertaining people. And we get from time to time emails from people in rural parts of Australia, Northern Territory, Queensland, where they just come across him. Fantastic. 131873 is that open line number. 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au. G'day, Colleen.
Oh, hello, Ray. I just, pardon me, I'm feeling very emotional. I just saw that nurse on the television talking about what they go through. I mean, if that doesn't move people to go out and get their vaccination, I don't know what will. I mean, those people, that woman and her co-workers, they go home, finish at the end of a shift, not only physically drained, but emotionally drained as well, because they've got the lives of those people in their hands, and they're probably feeling helpless to a degree because the thing has got to run its course. The medicine they give them has got to run its course. Why would you take the risk? I mean, I can't understand how people don't believe what's happening. I really don't. And that woman, she obviously loves her job. She'd have to go through what she's going through day after day after day. And they're putting their lives on the line as well, too, to help the likes of you and I. Now, I'm very elderly. I've had both my vaccinations. And, I mean, my kids grew up having their vaccines. And I just can't understand how people can't understand how. I mean, and you heard about those idiots that they got this morning, those 5 blokes. I hope you do name and shame them. And I think
don't worry about that, love. Yeah, we'll name and shame them if we can get hold of their names. I'll be the first one to read their names on air. Don't worry about that. We'll name the blockheads once we find out who they are, and I'm sure that the New South Wales Police will be far more cooperative than New South Wales Health are in releasing names of people who behave in such a fashion. You're right to be emotional, Colleen. Her name is Michelle Dowd, intensive care manager at Liverpool Hospital. And there were a couple of moments there where you just stop and you think, and they were talking about when time comes for end of life. And we're not just talking about people with COVID, and they're in a separate part of the ICU to those who are not suffering with COVID. And she talked about stroke patients, heart attack patients, people recovering from surgery in ICU, and some of them don't make it. And in normal circumstances, without COVID, the family are there to comfort that person and bring comfort to themselves in the latter stage of that person's life. But in these circumstances, they can't. They can't go there because of COVID. They can't go and visit the person nearing the end of their life. So what happens is that there's a phone call from people like Michelle to family members, and they hold the hand of the family member who's about to pass, and they fulfil the role of comfort giver, apart from their expertise as doctors and nurses of the highest quality. They're there to guide that person away from this life and bring comfort not just to them but to their family. So they know someone is caring for their mum, their dad, their nan, their pop, their son, their daughter, their brother or their sister,